It is 4:47 in the morning. The room is 14 degrees Celsius. You know this because the window unit beside the bed has been broken for 3 weeks and no one has come to fix it, and you have stopped asking. The ceiling above you is the color of old newspaper. There is a water stain in the shape of nothing in particular. You stare at it for exactly 45 seconds before your feet find the floor. This is how it begins, not with ceremony, not with a briefing or a handshake or a speech about loyalty. It begins with a cold floor and the knowledge that silence in this business is rarely safe. You are 26 years old. You have a secondary school diploma from a city no one visits on purpose, a dishonorable discharge that was quietly reclassified as something more neutral, and a single reference from a man whose name you were told never to repeat. That reference was enough. It is always enough for the right people. Your assignment is this. One man. His name is Carmine Russo. You will not call him by his first name for at least 2 years. You will call him Sir until he tells you otherwise, and even then you will hesitate. He is 53 years old, has a scar above his left eyebrow from something that happened before you were born, and controls an organization that moves roughly $11 million a year through businesses you will learn to describe as legitimate. He is not a large man. This surprises many people. Power rarely looks the way people expect it to. Your first morning on the job, you are handed a schedule printed on plain white paper. No letterhead, no logos. Times, addresses, names reduced to initials. You are told to memorize it and then burn it. You memorize it in 8 minutes. You burn it in the sink of your shared apartment bathroom. The smoke smells like procedure. You meet the other men in the detail over the course of that first week. There are 4 of you on primary rotation. Marco has been doing this for 11 years and speaks in half sentences. Dino is 28 and still has the habit of smiling at the wrong moments. Sal is 41 and looks at everyone the way a man looks at a door he expects to be kicked in at any second. You study them the way you were trained to study threats, quietly, consistently, without conclusion. The work itself is unglamorous in ways no one prepares you for. You stand, you wait, you scan. You stand some more. You learn every entrance and exit of every building before the principal arrives. You learn which restaurants have rear access through the kitchen, which hotels have service elevators that bypass the lobby, which parking structures have columns wide enough to compromise your sightline. You do not eat until the principal eats. You do not sleep while he is mobile. You do not use your phone in the car. These are not rules anyone writes down. They are simply the texture of the work. The cold is constant those first months. November bleeds into December. You stand outside a restaurant on Via Nerulana for 4 hours one Tuesday evening while snow falls and the temperature drops to -3. Your coat is rated to 0. You do not complain. You learn that complaining is a form of visibility, and visibility is something you are paid to avoid. By the end of the first month, you have memorized Russo's habits with the precision of a man who understands that deviation from habit is the primary indicator of threat. He drinks espresso at 7:15 a.m., always double, always standing at the counter, never seated. He walks on the right side of any hallway. He pauses at every doorway for approximately 2 seconds before entering, long enough to read the room, short enough that no one notices. He has a slight preference for sitting with his back to a solid wall. You share this preference. It is one of several things you will come to understand you have in common. You do not know yet what this job will cost you. You know only that you are good at it, that the cold does not bother you the way it bothers others, and that the silence, for now, still feels manageable. There is no ceremony when you are promoted. There is only the morning when Marco does not show up, and Sal tells you, without looking at you, that you are primary now. That is all. You are primary now. It is 14 months after you started. You are 27 years old. Your base monthly pay goes from 2,300 euros to 3,800 euros. No contract, no paperwork. The difference simply appears in the envelope that is left under your door every first of the month. You do not ask about taxes. No one asks about taxes. Being primary means you are now the man who travels in the car with Russo. You sit in the front passenger seat. Dino drives. Sal and a man named Enzo follow in the second vehicle. In the car, Russo sometimes speaks to you directly, not about the work, rarely about the work, about weather, about a restaurant he tried in Naples, about his son's grades, which are not good. These conversations are not intimacy, they are assessment. You are being watched the way you watch doorways. You understand this and behave accordingly. In your second year, you are present when a deal goes wrong. It happens in a warehouse in the industrial zone east of the city. You are not told what the deal is, which is normal. You are positioned by the north entrance, which is also normal. What is not normal is the sound of a chair overturning followed by a voice raised in a register you recognize as the precursor to violence. You move to the interior in 4 seconds. By the time you reach the room, 2 men are against the wall, and Russo is adjusting his cufflink. The transaction has been resolved. You stand in the doorway for a moment, cataloging damage, and then you step back to your position. No one discusses what happened. This too is normal. By your 3rd year, you have learned the grammar of the organization well enough to speak it without accent. You know which suppliers are trusted and which are managed through fear. You know which officials have been paid and which are unpaid but afraid. You know the difference between the men who are loyal out of belief and the men who are loyal out of calculation, and you know that the second category is larger by a factor of roughly 3 to 1. You file this information in the way you were trained to file tactical assessments: useful, unacknowledged, retained. Your first direct moral compromise arrives not as a choice, but as a logistical decision. A man named Ferretti has been speaking to people he should not be speaking to. You are told, not asked, to accompany 2 men to Ferretti's place of business on a Tuesday afternoon. You are there as presence, not participant. The message delivered to Ferretti is physical but not catastrophic. He will recover. He will also stop talking. You stand by the door the entire time, watching the street. You tell yourself this is your function. You tell yourself this is accurate. Both things are partially true. You receive a bonus of €600 that month. You do not return it. The next week, you eat at a restaurant you previously considered too expensive and order the veal without checking the price. You notice this about yourself and say nothing about it to anyone. In your 4th year, Dino is removed from the detail. The word used is transferred. You do not ask where. Enzo tells you later, in a car park, in the kind of low voice that means the conversation is not happening, that Dino had developed a gambling problem that had become a liability. You nod. You think about the times you saw Dino on his phone and assumed he was texting someone ordinary. You recalibrate. You become more careful about what you assume.
A man named Vito joins the detail. He is 32 and precise in a way that suggests military history. He and you develop a working rhythm within 6 weeks. You cover each other's angles without discussing it. You learn each other's tells, the slight shift of weight that means he's seen something worth tracking, the pause before movement that means he's calculating exit routes. Trust, in this work, is not emotional. It is functional. It is built from repetition, not from feeling. You are now 4 years in. You are 30 years old. Your weight is the same as it was at 26. Your resting heart rate is lower. Your peripheral vision has expanded in the way it does for people who spend years scanning rooms. Your savings account holds €22,000 in a bank you chose specifically for its discretion policies. Your apartment has changed once, slightly larger, slightly quieter, same cold winters. You have not called your mother in 7 months. She knows better than to ask what you do for work. This arrangement suits you both. The system has rules that are never written down. Learning them is a prerequisite for continued employment. Getting them wrong, even once, is a form of termination that does not always mean unemployment. You learn them the way you learn anything that cannot be taught, by watching, by failing in small increments, by absorbing the corrections offered by silence and proximity. The first rule: information is currency, and currency that circulates too freely loses value. You learn to hold what you know in the way a good poker player holds his hand, not visible, not discussed, not volunteered. You will know, by your 5th year, the names of 3 municipal officials on retainer. the identities of two men who laundered significant sums through a car dealership in the eastern suburbs, and the location of a property in the Lazio countryside that does not appear on any organizational chart. You will know these things the way you know the weight of your sidearm, by feel, without thinking about it, without ever writing it down. The second rule: proximity to power is not the same as power. This is the rule that breaks people who do not understand it early enough. You are not one of them. You understand, by year 4, that your value is functional, not political. You are not consulted, you are deployed. This distinction is the difference between men who last in this work and men who eventually mistake their access for influence. Influence requires the ability to initiate. Your role is to respond. You accept this boundary with the equanimity of a man who has stopped needing the validation that comes from being asked. The third rule: creative compliance is the operational standard. There are things that cannot be done directly. There are men who cannot be met in public, conversations that cannot be had in any room with windows, transactions that cannot pass through any institution that files reports. The system does not break rules. The system finds the geometry of the rules and works within the spaces between them. You become fluent in this geometry. You understand, for example, that driving a principal to a location is different from accompanying him inside. You understand that standing outside a door is not the same as standing inside a room. You understand that what you see is a matter of where you position yourself, and that positioning is something you control. This is not rationalization. This is craft. By year 5, you are managing the logistics of the principal's travel calendar, a function no one formally assigned you and no one formally acknowledged, but which you absorbed because the person responsible was removed and the work still needed doing. This means you know 4 to 6 days in advance where Russo will be and when. You know his medical appointments, a cardiologist in Padioli every 6 weeks, always Tuesday, always cash, and his personal appointments, which you do not catalog in any document and which you have learned to not observe too closely. You know that he travels to Palermo 3 times a year, in September, November, and March, always staying at the same hotel, always in the same room, always checking in under a name that is 3 letters removed from his own. The financial picture clarifies around this time. Your monthly envelope has grown to 5,200 euros. There is a supplementary arrangement, a flat retainer paid quarterly through a cleaning company in which you are listed as a part-time employee, that adds another 9,600 euros annually. Your total income, if it were reported, which it is not, would place you comfortably in the upper middle range of your demographic. Your apartment now costs 1,100 euros a month. You own 2 suits that cost more than your mother spent on clothing in any given year of her working life. You notice none of this particularly. The numbers have ceased to feel like numbers and begun to feel like weather, ambient, unavoidable, not worth discussing. There is a moment in your 5th year that you will return to later, when you are trying to identify the precise point at which you stopped being adjacent to the system and became part of it. It happens on a Wednesday in February. Temperature -4 outside, inside the back room of a trattoria that has been closed to the public for the evening. A conversation is occurring between Russo and a man you know is a prosecutor, though no one has introduced him as such. You are at the door. You hear enough to understand the broad shape of the exchange. Something is being avoided that might otherwise not have been avoided. The prosecutor is not being coerced. He is being reminded of a previous accommodation and asked whether he remains comfortable with the arrangements that have served them both. He says yes. He leaves. You hold the door for him. He does not look at you. Later that evening, in your car, you sit for 6 minutes before starting the engine. Not because you are disturbed, because you are not disturbed, and you are aware that the absence of disturbance is itself a kind of data point. You start the engine. You drive home. You sleep without difficulty. This, too, is information you file away and do not discuss. The erosion does not announce itself. It does not arrive in a single dramatic moment of personal collapse. It is slower than that, and more thorough, and much harder to locate in retrospect, because the very faculties you would use to locate it are among the first things to go. It begins with the relationships. You had a friend from before, from the military years, a man named Conrado, who drove trucks for a logistics company and watched football on weekends and sent you texts about matches as if you were still the person who cared about those things. For 2 years, you texted back. For a 3rd year, you texted back less frequently, with greater effort, conscious of the gap between what you were allowed to say and what he was asking, however inadvertently, when he asked about your week. In the 4th year, the texts became monthly, then seasonal. By the 6th year, you receive a birthday message in October and reply 3 days later with something that reads like a form. He stops texting, eventually. You notice this and do nothing. The window of the thing has closed, and both of you knew it, and neither of you said so. There was a woman. Her name is not something you dwell on. She lasted 14 months, which is longer than the others. She was patient with the hours and the unavailability, and the habit you had developed of sitting with your back to walls, even in her apartment, even on Sunday mornings that should have been soft and ordinary. What she could not tolerate in the end was the silence, not the absence of words, but the presence of something behind your eyes that she could not name and that you could not explain, because explaining it
would have required you to describe a version of yourself that you had not yet acknowledged existed. She left on a Thursday. You helped her carry 3 boxes to her car. You were professional about it. She found this devastating. You understood this later, in the way you understand most things, after the fact, from a distance, without the ability to change the outcome. Isolation does not feel like loss. This is the part that is hard to communicate to anyone who has not been through it. It feels, instead, like efficiency. The fewer people who require your energy, the more energy you have for the work. The work is constant, demanding, and this is the part that troubles you occasionally in the early mornings, genuinely interesting to you. You are good at it. You derive something from being good at it that you cannot precisely name. It is not pride. It is more like the quiet satisfaction of a precisely calibrated instrument operating within its designed parameters. You begin around year 6 to notice things about yourself that were not previously true. You taste food for Rousseau's safety as part of your operational function. You always have. But you now find yourself doing a version of this with information, pre-screening everything for threat before allowing it to reach you fully. Conversations pass through a kind of filter. You are present in rooms without being present in rooms. People speak to you and receive responses that are technically correct and emotionally inert. You are aware of this. You are not particularly troubled by it. The awareness itself is something you track the way you track all data, dispassionately, from a professional distance. Your body changes in the way bodies do when they are maintained as instruments rather than lived in. You exercise with the regularity and affect of someone servicing equipment. You sleep 6 hours reliably. You eat by schedule rather than appetite. You drink occasionally, in measured amounts, in private, never enough to compromise function. You have not been ill in 3 years. You have not been genuinely relaxed in longer than you can accurately remember. These 2 facts feel related in a way you have not quite articulated. There are secrets you carry now that are not yours. You know about the arrangement with the prosecutor. You know about a property transfer that occurred in a way that deprived 3 families of a building they had lived in for 2 generations. You know about a man. You knew his name once, though you have taken to not retaining names in this category, who was persuaded to relocate permanently in the autumn of year 5. You did not participate in any of these things in any direct sense. You were present, adjacent, functional. You held doors and watched streets and moved through the geometry of events without touching their centers. You have told yourself this is a meaningful distinction. You believe it most of the time, to roughly 70% certainty. The remaining 30% you have learned to seal off and store somewhere that does not interfere with operational function. Rousseau notices the quality of your work. He says so once, in the car, without looking at you, in the flat tone he uses for facts rather than compliments. You are reliable, he says. You say, thank you. He says nothing else. It is the most significant conversation you have had in some months, and you understand that this is true, and you do not dwell on it. The man you were at 26 is still present somewhere in the architecture of who you are. You can feel him occasionally, the way you feel a healed fracture in cold weather, a pressure, a slight ache, a reminder that the bone was once broken and that the break left structure behind. You do not grieve him particularly. You have learned to work with what you have. The wedding is in June. It is the marriage of Russo's niece, a girl of 22 named Julia, who you have seen perhaps a dozen times over the years, usually in passing, usually with the distracted warmth of someone who has grown up accustomed to being surrounded by men who do not quite look at her. The venue is an estate 40 kilometers south of the city. Stone walls, cypress trees, tables laid with white cloth, the kind of afternoon light that feels designed. 89 guests. You have vetted 67 of them by name. The remaining 22 are lateral family connections, low probability, assessed and logged. You have been here since 7:30 in the morning. It is now 20 past 3 in the afternoon. You have checked every entrance. You have walked the perimeter twice. You know where the catering staff entered, where the photography team staged their equipment, where the 2 other members of the detail are positioned. Sal is at the main gate. Vito is near the terrace. You are inside, near the head table, unobtrusive in the way you have spent years perfecting. The ceremony has concluded. The reception is in its second hour. There is a band playing something mid-tempo and inoffensive. The light through the windows of the estate falls in long, pale rectangles across the floor. People are dancing. People are drinking. The room has reached that particular frequency of noise that comes from genuine celebration, layered, overlapping, without edges. You are watching the room the way you always watch rooms, not looking for anything specific, looking for everything, waiting for the thing that breaks the pattern. It comes as a smile. You see it from across the room. A man, mid-40s, well-dressed, glass in hand, positioned 3 tables from the head table, whose smile has not changed in 11 minutes. Not the fixed smile of social anxiety, the fixed smile of someone monitoring an internal clock. His left hand is at his side. His right hand holds the glass. His weight is on his forward foot. He is watching Russo. You move. You are crossing the room, hand inside your jacket, and in the same moment that the music shifts to a slower tempo and people are repositioning and the geometry of bodies is briefly fluid, you see the child. She is 7 years old. You do not know her name. She is wearing a white dress with a yellow sash, and she is standing in the direct line between the man with the fixed smile and the head table. She is watching the dancers. She has no awareness of what is about to happen. She is simply there, in that line, the way children find themselves in lines without understanding that lines exist. The man's hand comes out of his jacket. You have approximately half a second, possibly less. Your training accounts for this. Your body moves before the decision is conscious. You step left, toward the child, and you are pulling her behind you, and your body is covering you, and the sound that comes is not as loud as you expected, not as clean as training. And there is a burn in your left shoulder that resolves itself into pain approximately 4 seconds after the fact, which is the documented latency of acute trauma, which is something you know because you memorize the documentation, which is the kind of thing you do. Russo is not hit. Russo is on the floor, covered by Vito, who moved from the terrace in 3.1 seconds by your estimate. The man with the smile is on the floor. There are people screaming. The music has stopped. The windows still hold their rectangles of light, indifferent and precise.
The child is unhurt. She is crying. She is not injured. You establish this in the first 6 seconds, and then you are in operational mode, and the next 45 minutes are a sequence of actions you will be able to report later with complete clarity, because clarity under duress is your primary professional quality. It is only afterward, much afterward, 3 days later, in your apartment at 2 in the morning, with your shoulder in the first phase of healing, with the city outside making its ordinary sounds, that the thing happens. You are sitting in your kitchen chair, and you are thinking about the child in the white dress and the yellow sash, and you are thinking about the half-second, and you are thinking about the fact that you moved toward her without the decision being conscious, and you are thinking about what that means, that your body, after 7 years of systematic formation, still moved toward the child, and then you were thinking about everything it moved away from in the same moment. And then you were thinking about all the times you stood at doors and held exits and drove cars and memorized schedules. And you were thinking about the prosecutor who left without looking at you,
And you were thinking about the man whose name you stopped retaining. And you were thinking about Ferretti. And you were thinking about the woman who found the silence devastating. And you were thinking about Corrado and his texts about football and your last reply that read like a form. You sit in the chair for a very long time. Nothing dramatic happens. There is no breakdown. There are no tears. There is simply the quiet, complete, irreversible understanding that you have been participating, and that participation was a choice, and that the choice was made in installments so small that each one felt like nothing, and the sum of nothing added to nothing added to nothing has produced something very specific and very permanent and very much your own. The shoulder aches. You take 2 ibuprofen. You sit in the chair until the sky lightens. Then you stand up and make coffee and drink it standing at the counter, because that is what you do in the morning, and the morning still requires it. You put in your notice in October. There is no word for this in the organization. There is no HR department, no exit interview, no 2 weeks of transition. There is a conversation with Russo in the back of the car on a Tuesday between 2 appointments, in which you say that you believe the time has come to make a change. He listens. He says nothing for 40 seconds, which is a long silence even by his standards. Then he says that you have been reliable and that reliability is not forgotten. He says that there are terms to any departure and that these will be communicated. You understand. He looks out the window for the remainder of the drive. The terms are communicated by a man you have not met before, in a coffee bar near the river, over 2 espressos. They are reasonable. They involve a period of 6 months in which you will be available by phone for consultation. They involve a financial arrangement, a lump sum of 43,000 euros in exchange for the continued management of what you know. They involve the understanding, conveyed without direct statement, that the geography of your future life should not include this city for at least 24 months. You agree to all of it. The espresso is good. You pay for both cups. Your replacement is a man named Adamo. He is 25. He has a background in private military contracting, a calm face, and the particular quality of stillness that marks people who are good at this kind of work. You spend 8 days briefing him, the habits, the routes, the timing, the relationships, the geometry of the rooms. He takes notes in a small notebook with a black cover. He is thorough. He asks good questions. He will be adequate within 3 months and excellent within a year. You understand this with the same clarity with which you understand threat assessments, clearly, without sentimentality, from the operational facts. On your last official day, Russo shakes your hand. It lasts 2 seconds. He says your name once, without the title, which is something he has done perhaps 4 times in 7 years. You leave the building by the rear exit, which is the exit you always used, and you walk to your car and you drive away, and the organization does not pause. It continues. The schedules are already Adamo's schedules. The routes are already his routes. The car goes on moving through the city with the same mechanical certainty it always had. You are not in it. This is not a tragedy. This is the design. You drive north. You have rented a house near a lake in a region you have never worked in. The house costs 680 euros a month. It has a wood stove and a kitchen that faces east and receives morning light from approximately 7:40 in October. The nearest neighbor is 300 meters. The nearest city is 40 kilometers. You do not yet know what your life looks like from here. This is the first time in 7 years that you have not known what comes next, and the sensation is so unfamiliar that you spend the first week interpreting it as threat before you understand that it is simply open space. You walk in the mornings, not to map exits, not to assess. You walk because the body requires movement, and the lake is there, and the light on the water at 8:15 in the morning is a specific shade of gray-blue that has no tactical significance whatsoever, and which you find, to your ongoing mild surprise, that you notice. You think about the child sometimes. You think about the half-second. You think about what it means that the body moved the way it moved, that beneath 7 years of systematic calibration, something had remained that was older and simpler and directed toward the specific gravity of a child in a white dress with a yellow sash, standing in a line she did not know existed. You do not resolve this thought into a conclusion. You return it to where it lives, and you keep walking. Back in the city, the car is moving. The routes are the same. Adamo is in the passenger seat, learning the rhythm of the thing, building the fluency that will in time become a second language and then a first. The machine does not know you left. It does not know you were there. It has consumed you like all systems consume the individuals who serve them, completely, efficiently, without record or remainder. Somewhere in that city, a man 22 years old has been handed a schedule printed on plain white paper. He is memorizing it. In 8 minutes, he will burn it in a sink. The smoke will smell like procedure. He will not yet know what this costs. He will learn in installments, the way you learned, each small payment feeling like nothing, until the sum becomes something irreversible and permanent and entirely his own. The shoulder aches. You take 2 ibuprofen. You sit in the chair until the sky lightens. Then you stand up and make coffee and drink it standing at the counter, because that is what you do in the morning, and the morning still requires it. You put in your notice in October. There is no word for this in the organization. There is no HR department, no exit interview, no 2 weeks of transition. There is a conversation with Russo in the back of the car on a Tuesday between 2 appointments, in which you say that you believe the time has come to make a change. He listens. He says nothing for 40 seconds, which is a long silence even by his standards. Then he says that you have been reliable and that reliability is not forgotten. He says that there are terms to any departure and that these will be communicated. You understand. He looks out the window for the remainder of the drive. The terms are communicated by a man you have not met before, in a coffee bar near the river, over 2 espressos. They are reasonable. They involve a period of 6 months in which you will be available by phone for consultation. They involve a financial arrangement, a lump sum of 43,000 euros in exchange for the continued management of what you know. They involve the understanding, conveyed without direct statement, that the geography of your future life should not include this city for at least 24 months. You agree to all of it. The espresso is good. You pay for both cups. Your replacement is a man named Adamo. He is 25. He has a background in private military contracting, a calm face, and the particular quality of stillness that marks people who are good at this kind of work. You spend 8 days briefing him, the habits, the routes, the timing, the relationships, the geometry of the rooms. He takes notes in a small notebook with a black cover. He is thorough. He asks good questions. He will be adequate within 3 months and excellent within a year. You understand this with the same clarity with which you understand threat assessments, clearly, without sentimentality, from the operational facts. On your last official day, Russo shakes your hand. It lasts 2 seconds. He says your name once, without the title, which is something he has done perhaps 4 times in 7 years. You leave the building by the rear exit, which is the exit you always used, and you walk to your car and you drive away, and the organization does not pause. It continues. The schedules are already Adamo's schedules. The routes are already his routes. The car goes on moving through the city with the same mechanical certainty it always had. You are not in it. This is not a tragedy. This is the design. You drive north. You have rented a house near a lake in a region you have never worked in. The house costs 680 euros a month. It has a wood stove and a kitchen that faces east and receives morning light from approximately 7:40 in October. The nearest neighbor is 300 meters. The nearest city is 40 kilometers. You do not yet know what your life looks like from here. This is the first time in 7 years that you have not known what comes next, and the